Adrian Mateos is at least on the fringes of the conversation of best tournament player in the world. That is not a guy you really want to play against, but that's the spot Ashri Lamani finds himself in the EPT Monte Carlo when he has two kings and Adrian puts him in a really tough spot.
Yeah, this is what happens. It just keeps happening. Also, Lamani doesn't have a lot of blinds. He starts the hand with like 23 blinds or something like that. Also tough, but what are you going to do? This, of course, was suggested to us on Twitter by Magnet Carta. Thank you, Magnet Carta. If you have a hand that you want to suggest for the breakdown, tweet it at us and include a YouTube link. That's how you get the chickens done.
That's
yeah,
how you get the chickens
that's what they
done.
say now.
Hey, and if you want to play some poker of your own, we suggest Nitrogen Sports Poker Room. And if you use the link in the description of this video, you get to play in our monthly Poker Guys viewers and listeners only tournament where there's a 100 millibit guarantee and a 0.1 millibit buy-in. That means the guarantee is 1,000 times the buy-in. We've only ever gotten as many as 73 players. Do a little math, you dummies. You got to get in there.
Yeah, it's a Bitcoin-only casino, in case you're wondering what these millibits are. Basically an 80-cent buy-in, like $800 guaranteed. As Grant said, get in there, get you some poker, use the link in the description.
Oh, kings. Ashri Lamani.
He loves the game of poker, and he loves Ashri Lamani.
Every country in the world should have their own version of Bryn Kenny. This is Israel's Bryn Kenny.
That's why they call him Bryn Kenny World.
Mateos with 8-6 off. A quick question from Herman, hashtag PokerStarsTV on Twitter. Only one player posting the ante is a great new thing. Speeds and cleans up the game. But why is it the big blind and not, for example, the button? What are the pros and cons behind deciding this? Well, I think as Maria explained, and wow, flop better, Adrian. Pair and an open-ended straight draw, he's not going anywhere. When you make it the big blind ante, you're always having the ante posted. There will be some hands in certain situations where you don't have a button or you don't have a small blind.
Okay, if you're playing in your normal tournament at the local card room, you probably would be betting this flop a lot. We might be betting this flop a lot too, by the way. Ashri, thank you, Lamani, decides not to bet this flop. He definitely has a reason or two for it. Grant, what do you got?
Well, usually you're definitely going to see a bet here, obviously.
Yeah.
So this leads me to believe that Ashri Lamani is a GTO-centric player. He thinks in terms of game theory more than he thinks in terms of exploit and what he actually wants to happen in a hand. This has to be a balance check because this board is better for Mateos' range than for Lamani's range, which even though he opened in the cutoff, he has just over 20 blinds. He's going to have a relatively tight range here, whereas Mateos is going to have all the straights and two pairs in his range on this board, has a bit of a range advantage. So Lamani's thinking, you have a range advantage, that means I'm always checking on this board.
Right.
Even though I have a hand that I'd really love to bet, and I'd really love to get value from some one-pair hands, and I'd love to protect against weird gut shots and stuff, but he decides, for balance, I gotta check it.
See, the thing that's dangerous here is because Lamani is so short, I actually don't know if this is a good check.
I don't think it is.
There's some balance questions here, which are we really going to be betting ace-king? I think we can actually bet a lot of our really good hands here, including ace-king, which is obviously more of a bluff, although often going to be the best hand anyway. But I think when we're this short, we just have to bet because we actually don't mind Mateos check-raising all in or check-raising at all. We want to encourage it. Mateos is the kind of guy who absolutely can check-raise and not have it. This is a good spot. Let's try and get chips in right now. We're short. We kind of need to win this pot.
We kind of need to win this spot, and we would love to double up. And as Jonathan was saying, Mateos is a capable player. He's not always going to have us if he check raises.
Of course.
Now, it's a very different story if we're 50 blinds effective. Then it becomes a bit of a scarier spot to get check raised. But when we have about 20 blinds remaining, and that is nowhere near the average of the tournament, we really need to get some chips here. We don't mind taking Adrian Mateos and saying, hey, if you're going to check raise, I'm going with it, you know?
And think about this. Here are the cards you don't want to see for one reason or another. A 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9 all can shut down action whether you have the best hand or not. It's going to be really hard to put bets in on the turn or call bets, although you're probably going to call at least one. That's a lot of cards. By the way, you don't love seeing an ace either if you just check it back. There's so many bad cards, like 40% of the deck or something like that. I think we should be betting.
Yeah, I do too, but I understand the balance aspect of it. Let's see if it works out.
Whereas if you make a big blind ante, there is always one player posting the ante. And I guess there are pros and cons to each approach, Maria.
Yeah, I mean, I found that it just makes more sense for the big blind to ante, but either way, I think just one person anting is far superior to the way that it's still mostly done, which is everybody anting. So I think, as time goes by and this is more implemented, we can kind of, discuss what is the best option. But for now, I just like that it's in play here.
I'm really going to miss the dealer asking me every hand to put my ante out. It's one of the only human interactions I have. I will still forget in the big blind.
Wow, Mateos gets there.
And that's unfortunate for Lamani. I really liked the way he played this hand. He checked back that flop because he knows that he's going to get check raised a lot on that board texture. He doesn't necessarily want to get it in on that kind of flop with kings, even though it's an overpair. And then he delayed c-bet the turn, which Adrian called, and now it's obviously just a terrible run out. But I think he can get away from it, and I think that's the beauty of playing it the way that he did. This is the worst card for him. This or a 7.
Right.
You know?
If he knows that he doesn't want to get it in on that flop, then this is a very bad river.
So Lamani's clock is running right now. If he goes over the 30-second mark, he'll have to surrender one of those time bank cards, each one worth 30 seconds.
And I think this is a fine spot to definitely use that time bank. It is for half of his stack. And I'm sure that's something he's thinking about. He's thinking about Mateos' river sizing here.
He gets called.
It's just too easy.
Mateos tables the straight.
Man, it just sucks to play against good players, right? I mean, like, against a lot of the bad players of the world, this is just an easy fold with kings for Lamani. But Mateos is maybe, he's in the conversation of, like, top 10 players in the world. So you're not going to just say, okay, it's easy. There's a 4 straight on the board. I have to fold to Mateos. No, we can't do that as Ashri Lamani. We really have to think it through for a couple reasons. One, it's Mateos. 2, we really under-repped our hand when we checked the flop. That's a big deal.
That is absolutely a big deal. However, there are some counterpoints to that which are really important too. The biggest one, I think, is that we bet big on the turn. We didn't bet small. We bet more than half the pot. Mateos check called. He's not doing that with just a straight draw. So the only way we're good here is if Mateos is turning a pair into a bluff, trying to get a jack to fold on the river, like turning a 5 or something into a bluff, which he's capable of. But is he really doing that often when we're this short? I don't know, honestly.
Conversely,
but that's what we can beat.
Conversely, the only straights Mateos has had a pair with the straight draw.
Correct.
Because of the same reason. So he has to have a hand like he has, like 6-8, 5-8, 7-8, maybe Jack-8, hands like that. So that really limits the amounts of straights that Mateos has. So the next question we have to ask ourselves is, does Mateos take any 2-pair hand and do this for value?
I think he does, but I think the only 2-pair hands that have a 9 in them, because I think he probably would have bet the turn himself if he had 2-pair, almost always, or check raised or something. But he's got all the 2-pair hands with 9s in them, though. I think he's got 9-5 suited for sure. He probably has 9-5 off. He certainly has 9-6, 9-7, Jack-9, all of that. And I think he would lead here with those hands, thinking it's just going to go check, check way too often. He's trying to get value out of a jack.
Yeah, so some good, some bad there as far as whether or not we should call. There's another aspect here, and that is, what is the result if we call and lose versus call and win? Call and lose, we're down to 9 bigs. That means we're in the definite danger zone. We're usually out of the tournament pretty soon. Call and win, we're up to 40 bigs.
Really good.
This is a serious stack in a well-structured tournament. So you have to weigh those against each other, because if we fold here, we have 18 bigs, which is, like, what's the difference between 18 and 40 versus 18 and 9? That's what we have to ask ourselves.
It's really weird because they're both significantly different from each other. 40 big blinds, you actually have some real room to do some things. You want to get more up to 60 or 70 to really be able to, be loosey-goosey and make a lot of plays. But 40, you absolutely can be 3-betting light. You can do some check raises, light. You can do all sorts of stuff. 18 blinds, you're just 3-betting all in a lot pre-flop. And 9 blinds, if we call and lose, well, we're just shoving pre, and that's kind of our only move. So it's a huge difference in terms, this spot right now that we're in, this decision really matters.
Yeah, I think I would find myself folding here a lot, but as we said, it seems likely that Lamani is kind of a game theory guy, and Distribution says call.
No question.
Like, we definitely have one of the better hands we ever show up with here. Of course, we have some sets because we're probably checking back sets on the flop before checking back 2 kings. But it's hard to have a better hand than 2 kings here, having opened with about 20 big blinds.
And checked it back.
And checking it back. So with distribution, that might be why Lamani decided to call.
It's a reasonable thing, and honestly, Mateos is a reasonable customer if you have to pick somebody to call against. Mateos is a little bit insane. You'll see a hand we recommend at the end of this video with him against Johnny Lawton, where he's just cray-cray. Still, I think this is probably a fold against most opponents, and probably even Mateos in this spot, just because we bet so much on the turn and he check called out of position. He doesn't have just a straight. He can have a straight, but he had something before that too, which means he would have to be turning one pair into a bluff for us to be good here. I just don't see him doing it that often.
It's unlikely, but he's the guy who could do it.
I know.
It's just a tough spot.
It's a super tough spot. Super tough spot here for Lamani. We aren't really sure what he's supposed to do. We think he's supposed to fold. We think we'd fold. It's harder when you're actually in the moment, too, when you're this under-repped against a guy like Mateos. I might just put the chips
You talk
on,
yourself
honestly.
into it against a guy like Mateos.
Yeah.
You're like, he's just messing with me. You can't let him do
I
it.
can't let him have like 4-5 or 5-3 suited here and just beat me. So I call. I don't know. But what do you guys think? Do you think this actually is a good call? Do you think this is a clearer fold than we think? What are your thoughts? Let us know in the comments. We look forward to seeing what you have to say.
Now, we mentioned before that there is a really cool hand between Adrian Mateos and Johnny Lawton. Back when Adrian Mateos kind of burst onto the scene a couple of years ago.
So good.
We did this a while ago, so, forgive some of the camera work and stuff like that. But it's a super cool hand, so we still got to point you to it. It's right up there.
So good. Elite.
Yeah.
Type hand. No one has anything in this hand, but man, they play for so much. If you want to know more about this hand and how we came to all the decisions and thoughts about this hand that we shared in this video, you got to check out our podcast, The Breakdown, presented by the Poker Guys. That's where we spend a good 50 minutes, that's 50, just talking about this one hand, all the decisions on the decision tree, sort of going down each path and trying to figure out what's optimal, what makes sense, what's right, what's wrong, etc.
All the different types of decision trees. Apple, walnut, good old oak.
Walnut.
Yeah,
sure.
Oak is a good decision tree, and I think you should check out an oak decision tree.
Make fun of decision trees if you want. I mean, that's the life you're living.
I'm
apparently.
just, I just did a little bit. It's the end of the video. Nobody's watching anyway.
Just make
hey,
fun
if you're still watching, that means you probably already have subscribed. But if you haven't, make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel.